Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Richard. I'm the subject librarian for medicine, dentistry, and biomedical sciences at Queen's University Belfast. And during this session, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you an overview of some of the tools you can use to find high quality literature and research on sort of medicine, healthcare related topics. So ordinarily at training sessions like this for students, I would just go straight in and show them how to use Queen's University resources. But because you're not at the stage of having that access, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you, sort of give you an overview of general resources that you can just access via Google. And then at the end, I'll touch on what's available through the library at Queen's, just to give you a sense of what might be available kind of wherever you end up at whatever university, college or institution. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn my camera off and then I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen. So hopefully you can see my screen okay. I've got a BBC news story up. So I'm going to use a sort of a specific example topic for my demonstration over the next little while. And I want to use this BBC news story about Deborah James and her death last week from bile cancer, just as an example topic. So obviously the research topic that you're undertaking, that you have to do a piece of work on, could be substantially different from this, but the sort of the principles in terms of how you search for information on a healthcare related topic, whatever it is, will be similar. So your topic might be different from this, but the actual process and the resources that you're going to search would, generally speaking, be similar. So yeah, so you'll probably have seen in the news last week that Deborah James, who had bile cancer, she unfortunately passed away due to her illness. And a big part of her legacy is she wanted to raise awareness of bile cancer symptoms, and she really wanted to encourage people who think that they might have bile cancer or symptoms of it to get themselves checked out. So let's say you do want to use this sort of very topical news story as the starting point for finding information on a topic. So the specific topic that we're going to look for is to find research that looks at bile cancer checks, or as it's known in more sort of clinical terminology, bile cancer screening. And this is often the case, if we follow it through to the health service, doctors and nurses and people like that who ask me for literature searches, it's often because they've seen sort of trends coming up in the news and in literature and things like that. And they'll maybe ask me to do a literature search for them or show them how to do the search themselves. So having a starting point like this, whether it's a news story or another piece of research that you've read about, this is usually kind of the starting point for any kind of research that you'll undertake. So yeah, so let's say you do want to find some information, some good quality information on the topic of bile cancer screening. Now, a good starting point is just to do a Google search. So if you just click on Google and then you can just put in your search terms. Now, there's some ways that you can try to just narrow your Google search down and just make it a bit more, I guess, a bit more focused. So for example, if I type in, whoops, help if I spelled it right. If I type in my terms bile cancer screening, you'll see that Google makes various suggestions. But what I can do is I can, as I say, try to focus this search a little bit. So there are two bits to my search, if you sort of think about it. Rather than bile cancer screening just being one concept or one subject, it's actually two separate concepts. So the first concept is actually bile cancer, and the second concept is actually screening. So when you sort of break this search topic down, this Google search, it's not just one search, it's kind of two searches, two subject searches that we're trying to combine together. So what we can do to try to narrow our results down a bit and make sure we're definitely just getting our Google results that are about bile cancer as well as screening, we can type "and" between those two concepts. So we can type bile cancer and screening, and that will help to narrow down results a little bit rather than just looking for bile cancer screening. Then there's a few other things we can do. These are optional, but bile cancer, that's a phrase. It's not just one word, it's two words. So to tell Google that you want to look for the words in a phrase beside each other together rather than separately, you can just put quotation marks or speech marks around them. So that's a useful tip. If you are searching for any kind of phrase, there are ways to group those words together. And in Google, you can just put quotation marks around them. And then another sort of tip is instead of just looking for screening, which might only pick up that exact word, and it might not pick up variations of that. Like I'm just trying to think, like let's say a patient goes for a bile cancer screen or something like that. What you can do is you can take off the end of the word, the ing, and just replace that with an asterisk. So the asterisk, pretty much in any website search engine database that you would ever encounter, if you put an asterisk at the end of a word, you'll get different spelling variations such as plurals, the ing version, the past tense versions. So it just builds a little bit of flexibility into your search. So yeah, so you can just type that in, and then if you just search for that, you'll then get a list of results. Now, as usual with Google, the number of results will be huge. You know, I've got over 3.5 million results. But because I've taken those steps of putting, you know, bile cancer and screening and putting quotation marks around the phrase bile cancer, for example, the actual results I've got should be a bit more focused and they should be more relevant. Generally speaking, with Google results, there's no way that you can go through the full set of results unless you're looking for something really, really specific that might return a really low number. So for a set of results this big, usually what people do is they just go through the first page or two of Google results, and they should be the ones that are most relevant. And generally speaking, in Google, although sometimes some Google results won't be great, they'll maybe be of poor quality. Generally speaking, anything that should be on the first page or two should be relatively high quality from sources that you can rely on. So just looking down through some of these results, you can see here the top result is from nhs.uk, their website. And going down through the list, you'll see that there'll be results from some like Cancer Research UK, charities and bodies and organisations that you will recognise, hopefully, and that you can have a fair bit of trust in. So anything that comes up here, then you can click on it. So for example, here's an overview of bile cancer screening tests that Macmillan have done. You can click on that, and then you'll get an overview of that topic. And as I say, as long as it's from a reputable source like a cancer charity or an NHS or government body, it should be of high quality and it should give you some really good information. Now, if you do want to go one step further and you want to find actual research in the form of like research papers or journal articles that are on a particular topic, there's other tools that you can use. And then whenever you go to college or university and start using its facilities, you'll find that there's loads more. So what I mean by sort of research and journal articles, these are pieces of work, articles that appear in magazines known as journals that contain that publish the latest research on particular topics. So rather than being like books, which are published and then they might not be updated for another 5-10 years, so they can go out of date relatively quickly, journal articles and journal content is updated all the time, and they reflect sort of the ongoing research that's going on in a particular area. So if you do want to get the most up-to-date sort of scientific technical information on a particular topic, journal articles are good places to look, and journals are good things to search. Now, you can search journals individually by going to their website, but you can also search resources called databases that allow you to search across multiple journals at once. And the big database that is relevant to medicine and healthcare is PubMed. So you can just Google for PubMed and it will usually be the top result. So you just click on it and PubMed will open up. So this is a search engine that searches across thousands, I think about 6,000 peer-reviewed, high-quality journals of relevance to medicine and healthcare. So PubMed, there are a number of different ways to search it, but let's say you just want to search it for some recent articles that are about bile cancer screening. So there's various ways to search PubMed, but the most effective way is to click on Advanced. And this allows you to run sort of a more controlled search than you would otherwise be able to run if you just stuck with this basic search box here. So I'm going to show you how you can use advanced search to run a literature search of reasonable complexity to find recent papers on the topic of bile cancer screening. So as I mentioned, whenever I was searching Google, if you think about it, bile cancer screening isn't just a single topic, it's two separate concepts. And whenever you are doing any kind of literature review in a medical database, it's always important, don't just search for all your terms or all your concepts in one go. You need to identify what your individual concepts are, and you look for those one at a time. So as I said, my search consists of two concepts. The first one is bile cancer. So I'm going to search PubMed for that term first, and then I'm going to follow that up with a search for articles about screening, and then they will be combined into a single search. So if we start off then, I'm just going to type in the first term for my concept, which is bile cancer. And as with my Google search, I want to tell PubMed only to look for those words beside each other rather than separately. Now in PubMed, it's a different, there's a different method of combining words that make up a phrase. So in Google, you put quotation marks around phrases, but in PubMed, you hyphenate them. So if you put a hyphen between two separate words or three words or four words, as many words are in the phrase, you're telling PubMed only to look for those words together and it won't look for them separately. So you're just sort of increasing your chances of finding literature that's relevant and potentially weeding out lots of stuff that isn't relevant. And then what we can do is, and this is optional, but often it's a good idea to to include synonyms in your search. So in other words, don't just look for the most obvious term for a particular concept. Try to think of other ways, of alternative ways of referring to it, because again, this will just increase your chances of finding relevant literature. So rather than just looking for bile cancer, we could look for synonyms like bile neoplasms or bile tumors, things like that. So if you do want to look for alternative terms for a concept in PubMed, you need to type OR. OR is always used to connect searches that are about similar subjects. So the terms I'm going to search for now are all similar in that they're all different ways of referring to bile cancer. So I can just type in then bile neoplasms. And again, bile neoplasms is a phrase. So I want to hyphenate that. And there's something else we can do. We can delete the S from the end of neoplasms. And if I replace that with the asterisk, that will get me both the singular and plural versions of the word neoplasm. So just like in Google, you can put an asterisk at the end of words in PubMed, and you'll get different spelling variations, different word endings. And then we can just repeat that. We can search for bile tumor. Now, of course, tumor has two spellings. There's the American English spelling as well as the UK English spelling. So where there is a word like that that does have two different spellings, you should just take the time to search for them both just for thoroughness. So I've typed in there bile cancer, bile neoplasm with an asterisk, bile tumor, the UK spelling, and then the American spelling as well. And again, I've put an asterisk at the end of tumor to get tumors plural, as well as apostrophe S, S apostrophe. So if there were any other terms for bile cancer, you would just type OR, and you could just type them in the same way. And then whenever you're finished, you just click Add, and that will add that set of terms to this query box. So we've now searched for everything, all the terms that describe bile cancer. And then we can move on and we that then for terms that describe our second concept, which is screening. So I'm just going to type in screening, and just like I did in Google for flexibility, I'm going to delete the ing and replace it with the truncation symbol, the asterisk, to get different word endings. And then if we have a think about different ways that screening might be referred to, we could look for synonyms such as test, and we could put an asterisk at the end of that. So we get tests, testing, etc. And then we could also look for investigate, and then just take the ending off that and replace it with the asterisk. So automatically PubMed is going to look for investigate as well as investigation, investigations, investigating, investigated, all the different possible variations of that word. So if there are any other terms for screening, you could look for specific examples of screening like colonoscopy or anything like that. And then whenever you're finished, then you just click, well, you'll see here that this button originally was add, Now that we're looking to add a second set of search terms to our search in the query box, you'll see that this button has changed to "and." So if I just click on that, you'll see it adds those screening or testing synonyms to the query box. And it means now that I've got both my terms, both my concepts are represented in this box. I've searched for synonyms for both of them. So now that I've searched for all these different terms for each of my two concepts, I can now click search, and PubMed will show me results that are about both of these concepts. So you can see here that I've got just over 98,500 results. So because PubMed is only looking through journal articles, high quality journal articles, the number of results you get in PubMed will never be as big as what you get in Google. So you'll never get millions upon millions of results. You will always get smaller numbers. Now, 98,500 results, though, is still pretty big. So we will want to try to reduce that number down a little bit. So for example, if we only want recent papers on this subject, we can use this slider over here to specify years. So you'll see that this graph here shows you all the years of the articles that we found, and the oldest paper is from 1946. But what we can do is we can move this slider up through time just to get articles that are more recent. So if we just wanted articles on this topic from the last 10 years, for example, I would just slide it up to 2012. And then that gets us down to 50,000 results. So still quite big, but we have got rid of about 45,000 results. And then there are other ways to narrow that number of results down. But the way I want to show you for this is this option here to tick this free full text box. Now, an issue for you probably with PubMed is that all the results that come up here, some of them will be available for you to read for free. But some of them will be in subscription journals that you would either need to pay for yourself, or you need to belong to a university or college or an NHS trust, say, that takes out a subscription to the journal in which these results are published, these articles are published. So whenever you get to Queen's, say, or wherever you end up, and you start using the library at that institution, you will get access for free to lots of journals that the university or whatever subscribes to in your behalf. But if you're sort of pre that stage, you won't have that access. But what you can do is you can just tick free full text, and that will filter out anything that's from a subscription journal, and it will just show you high quality journal articles that are available for you to read for free. So I would say a good standard practice is just to tick free full text. That refreshes the results, and just get me the ones that are free and that are from the last 10 years. So you can see we're down to just, well, I say just, but 24,000 results. So we are chipping away quite a lot at the number of results, getting it down to something that's a bit more like a manageable number. Another limit we can apply is, you can see this top result here, you'll see it mentions mice. So another limit as standard that we can apply is this one here for species. So if we tick humans, that'll get rid of any animal studies, and we should just be left with articles that are about humans. So there you can see that mouse article has disappeared. So there are lots of other things you can do to try to reduce numbers of results down, but those would be the main ones. And if you do get a number of results like this that is quite large, for your purposes, it's fine maybe just to go through the first page or two of results, because they're likely to be the most relevant. Another useful thing you can do is maybe limit results to systematic reviews. This is really useful because systematic reviews are pieces of research that have already kind of taken an overview of a subject rather than undertaking original research. So if you do just want to get an overview of a subject, limiting to systematic reviews can be really useful. So if I just tick systematic review, that gets rid of anything that isn't a systematic review. And you can see then we're down to an even more manageable number of 563. So hopefully that gives you some idea of how to structure an effective PubMed search, and then how you can use some of these limits down the left-hand side to reduce the number of results to something that's a bit more manageable. Then in terms of viewing results, you can just go down through them. And if a particular result looks useful, so I'm just trying to see if one sort of leaps out. So here's one about psychological distress associated with cancer screening. And it's from 2017, so it's quite useful. If you do want to read that paper because it's relevant to what you're researching, you can just click on that. And then the full PubMed record for that paper will open up, where you usually get an article abstract. So this is a summary of the article's content, and it give you an idea of whether or not the full paper is worth reading. So if you have a read down through that abstract and you decide, you know what, I do actually want to read this paper, you'll see here there are full text links that appear, and the word free appears in them. So this is because I chose that limit, free full text articles only. And that means then that any links that come up here should be to the full text of papers where there's no need to pay or take out a subscription. You can just download them directly. So just to demonstrate that, you can click on either of these links, but I'm just going to click on the bottom one. And that takes me then into a new window where I can read the paper. So usually you can read the article online as a web page like this, but usually then there will be an option to download it as a PDF. So if I click on this PDF link, the full text of the article opens up in PDF format. So it looks a bit more like how it would actually look in the actual journal that is published in. And a lot of people find that easier to read maybe than viewing the web version. So you can have a read down through this paper and decide if you want to, say, cite it in your piece of work or your introduction or whatever the piece of work is. And the great thing about PDFs is that you can download and keep them. So once a PDF comes up like this, the article is yours to keep. So you can download it and you can save it to the cloud or a memory stick. You can start to build up your own personal library of potentially relevant and useful papers that you can keep referring back to. So there's a lot more I could show you about PubMed, but I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. It's really just to raise awareness that it's there. And it is one of the most commonly used tools by researchers and then also professionals in sort of medicine and healthcare and life science fields. And it is a really useful tool. If you can get to grips with it now, you'll just be standing yourself in good stead for later on. But in terms of other places where you can look for good quality literature that might be a bit more straightforward to use than PubMed, if I go back to Google, another good source, particularly for people who are based in the UK and Ireland, are NICE guidelines. So if you just Google for NICE guidelines, and it should be the top result. So NICE stands for, it's not the best acronym, but it stands for the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. And NICE is basically responsible for synthesizing and reviewing research and evidence on particular treatments or interventions for diseases and other healthcare conditions. It synthesizes the evidence and produces guidelines that sort of take healthcare professionals and also students through the whole process of diagnosing conditions, treating them, side effects of potential drugs and treatments and things like that. So they are really useful, and healthcare professionals do refer to them quite a lot. But they're also a good source of like general overviews of conditions and treatment options that sort of students with not a lot of knowledge necessarily about the conditions, those students can look at guidelines, and they're these NICE guidelines, and they'll get a good overview. So what you do is you can just keep your searching on the NICE website really simple. So here you can just do bile cancer screening. You don't need to worry about specifying phrases or anything like that. Just keep it really simple. And then any results that are on the NICE website that relate to the concept of bile cancer screening will come up. So quite a small number, just and this reflects the fact that the NICE guidelines website is quite a compact site compared to all of Google and all of PubMed. So you will usually get a smaller number of often very relevant results, but you can just scroll down through these results and you can click on them and view whatever guidance. So here you can see, here's the official colorectal cancer guideline. You can tell the official NICE guidelines because they will always have an NG number after them. These are kind of like the flagship pieces of guidance that NICE prepare. And what you can do is you just click on the title of the guideline, and it's a bit like the journal article that I talked about. You can read it online as a web page if you want. There's links through to all the different sections of it, or you'll have an option to download it. So if you click on the download option, the guideline will open up, and you'll see this is a very recent or relatively recent guideline dating from the start of January 2020. And then you can view this guideline in full. It's got a contents page, so you can skip to different sections. So if you want to see what NICE recommends in terms of ongoing care and support or screening, there'll be sections on those. I'm just going to click on a section to show you. And you can see it's presented sort of quite clearly. It's quite accessible compared maybe to some journal articles that you might find. So yeah, that's just an overview of NICE guidelines. and they are completely free. So just like a journal article, you can download this PDF. It's yours to keep, and then you can use and refer to it as often as you want. So yeah, that's NICE guidelines. It's a really good source of healthcare information and background information in the UK and also in Ireland. Other sources then that you might want to use, a good free source of journal article content. If I just navigate back to Google, there's a collection of journals known as the Biomed Central journals. So if you just Google for Biomed Central, it should be the top result. So if I click on that, I'll be taken into the BMC or Biomed Central website. Just get rid of all these pop-up windows. And I can use this to look for journal articles that are about, in my case, bowel cancer screening. So Biomed Central or BMC, they're a publisher that's committed to open access publishing, which means free journal article publishing. So anything and all articles that are published on the Biomed Central website, they're completely free and anyone in the world really can download them. So again, you don't need to belong to a university or a library that has a subscription, because there is no subscription. All content is freely available. So if you want to search Biomed Central for free open access papers on a particular topic, you just click search. And a bit like in NICE guidelines, just keep your search nice and simple. So, bowel cancer, and then you just do bowel cancer screening, search for that. And it'll bring up a selection of results. So results are sorted by date automatically. They're sorted by relevance. If you find that too many old articles are coming near the top of the list, you can see here's an article from 2010. That's maybe a bit too old. What you can do is you can sort the results by date instead, and it'll put the most recent papers at the top. So the idea is you can just go down through the list of results, and if a particular article looks interesting, just trying to see if I can find one that doesn't. Yeah, so here's something about DNA testing in relation to colorectal cancer screening. You can just click on that and you're just taken straight into the article. There's no paywalls, there's no need to subscribe. You just can read the article as a web page, which is quite text heavy, but then you do have the download PDF option as well for all BMC articles. So if I click on that, it'll download the article full text. So you might find that it's a bit easier to read like this, and you also get diagrams and things like that. And then as with other PDFs that I've talked about, if you click on the download option, you'll be able to save that PDF. It's yours to keep and reuse. So that's Biomed Central. It's a really, really good source. It's very widely used. But it's a really good source of free journal content, and a lot of his content is quite accessible. You know, they're not all high-level studies. Sometimes there will be overviews and summaries of guidance and treatment options. So often they're a good source of introductory information as well. And you will find if you search PubMed and limit results to just the free or open access articles, Biomed Central results will come up quite often. So it will be hopefully a journal publisher interface or website that you will see quite a lot and you will become quite familiar with. Another source I just want to touch on, because it's free and it's a really good source of reliable information on healthcare topics, is the Cochrane Library. So if you just search Google for Cochrane Library, it'll be the top result and you can just go into it. So Cochrane are a little bit like NICE in the sense that they synthesize evidence and research on different topics, and they prepare various types of document, but kind of the flagship document they prepare are what's known as Cochrane systematic reviews. So these are kind of like really high level gold standard evaluations of different treatment options, of drugs and, you know, screening methods, all that sort of thing. So if you do want to do a search in the Cochrane Library and see if you can get some good quality evidence on a particular topic, what I recommend doing is clicking on Advanced Search, and then just make sure you choose the second search tab over. There's lots of different ways to search the Cochrane Library, but this is the way I recommend doing it. And even though I cleared my browser history, it's still remembering my last search. So I'm just going to clear that. So yeah, so let's say you want to search the Cochrane Library for articles that are about bile cancer screening. You can keep your search quite simple, or you can run a search that's a bit like the PubMed search that I demonstrated at the start of this session. You can sort of search for synonyms and alternative terms for your main concepts. So if we do want to do that, first of all here, I search for terms to do with bile cancer. So I'm going to type in bile cancer, and like in Google, but not like in PubMed. If you want to search for phrases in Cochrane Library, you should put quotation marks around the words that make up the phrase. But then you can type or, and you can look for synonyms for that concept. So I'm going to search for bile neoplasm. Again, that's a phrase, so I'm going to put quotation marks around it. And I'm also going to put the asterisk at the end of neoplasm to get neoplasms plural, for example. Then I can type or, and then I'll do the same for bile tumor, and I'm going to search twice for that, looking for the UK spelling of the word tumor, and then also the American spelling. So then once you put in all your terms for that first concept of bile cancer, you just click continue, and you'll see there's 328 results in the Cochrane Library that are about that. And then in the second box here, we can put in our terms for screening or testing or, or investigation. So again, I'm just putting the asterisk at the end of those word stems just to get different word endings and make sure my search is flexible. So if I click continue, all articles in the Cochrane Library about screening or testing or investigations are displayed. So now I want to see which results are about both of these subjects rather than about each one individually. So I want to combine these into a single search. And the way to do that is you need to type these search numbers and you need to type and between them. So just to show you, you just type number 1 and you have to put the hash symbol before the number. And then I'm going to type and then I'm going to type number 2. So this then is going to get me articles that are explicitly about bile cancer and screening or testing or investigation in some capacity. So if I click continue, I'll get my final number of results. You can see I've got 249. So if I click on those results, they will be displayed. Now, Cochrane Library results are divided up into lots of different types of results. So you can see here there's Cochrane reviews, there's protocols, there's trials, and some other types. Generally speaking, I would recommend sticking with the Cochrane reviews because they will be freely available to you as long as you're accessing them from a UK or Irish IP address. You can access them from other parts of the world as well, but there might be some geographical restrictions, so just be aware of that. As I say, if you were to click on trials, some of these trials that come up, you won't be able to read them because they will be subscription based, so you won't get free access. So that's why if you are searching Cochrane for now, I would recommend just sticking with the Cochrane reviews because they're going to be free. So then it's just a case of you just look down through the list of Cochrane reviews, and if one of them looks potentially useful, so I'm just going to go with this top one here because it is explicitly about colorectal cancer screening using a type of blood test, you can click on the review title and the full record for this Cochrane systematic review will open up. So this is going to become familiar. As with the other resources I've shown you, you can read it online as a web page, or you do have download options. So if I click the arrow beside download, you'll see there are different download options. There's full download, there's standard download, and there's summary download. If you just want a very quick overview of what the systematic review says, click on summary. If you do want to read the full review, just go with full, and then standard is somewhere in between. But yeah, if I click on the summary, that will download. And rather than giving me the full review, which sometimes might be hundreds of pages long, this is a relatively short document at 33 pages. Sometimes they are shorter than that. This is actually quite a long one. But rather than giving you the full review and going into all its details, it will sort of just give you an overview or summary of its findings and the process that the researchers undertook. So this is good if you do want an overview of a particular treatment or screening option or something like that. The summary version of a Cochrane systematic review is a good resource to look at. And as with the other PDF type resources that I've shown you, you do have a download option, so you can keep those Cochrane systematic reviews and refer to them later. There isn't a restriction on that. So that's the Cochrane Library. You might not want to use it, but again, if you do go on to clinical practice or you work for the health service or anything like that, Cochrane reviews, because they are so highly regarded, you will often find yourself having to refer to them. So again, if you can get familiar with them now and the process of searching the Cochrane Library website, you're really setting yourself up for sort of your years of professional practice and beyond. So you'll be pleased to hear that I am almost finished. I just wanted to finish up just by talking, first of all, about Wikipedia, and then also just about Queen's Library resources in general. So I'm just going to navigate back to Google, and then I just want to go into Wikipedia. So Wikipedia is often the source people go to first if they want an overview of a particular topic, whether it relates to healthcare or anything else. And there is a bit of stigma against it. You might have found sort of in your studies before now, and then definitely when you go, to university, it's one of the first things students are told whenever they start medicine, for example, at Queen's. They're basically told, never use Wikipedia, you can't trust it. That's true up to a point, but I would say it is actually fine to use Wikipedia. I would just say never essentially say that you've used Wikipedia, never cite or refer to Wikipedia directly. What you should do is, though, if you do find a useful bit of information in Wikipedia, track it back to its source and cite that original source. So what I mean by that is, let's say we search Wikipedia for bile cancer to get an overview of it. So bile cancer does have a page. So this is the Wikipedia record for bile cancer. And then if you scroll down to the end of Wikipedia articles, you'll see down here that they should have references. And generally speaking, the better the article, the more references it will have. That's a bit of a crude measure, but generally it's a good indicator. So what I'm saying is, if you do find a useful bit of information in the main body of a Wikipedia article, and if you mention that in your assignment or your piece of work, don't say in your reference list, oh, I got this from Wikipedia. Instead, try to find the source that the Wikipedia entry has drawn its information from, and cite that source instead. So if there was a bit of text in this Wikipedia record that you wanted to refer to in your piece of text, you would just go down to the references list and go to the reference where that piece of information has been taken from. And if the Wikipedia entry is really good, it'll be clear where that's come from and you'll be able to track that. So you'll see here, there's lots of useful information listed here as references, and a lot of these are really high quality. They're from respectable journals or textbooks and things like that. So let's say the piece of the Wikipedia entry that you want to cite or use in your own piece of work refers to this journal article here, which is reference 48. You can click on the article title and that will connect you through to a web page where hopefully you will be able to read or download the article. Now, Wikipedia editors are encouraged, if I just go back here, they are encouraged to cite only free or open access sources of information, but it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's not always possible. So sometimes you will click on the link at the end of a Wikipedia entry like this, and it will take you to a journal article where you have to log in or you have to pay for it. But generally speaking, where possible, they will try to link to free or open access sources of information. And this particular article from Nature, it is available open access. So the way I know that is that whenever I click on the article title, I'm taken to a web page like this where the PDF link is freely available. So there isn't a paywall or any option to have to pay or sign in. So I can just click on that link. The article will open up in PDF format. I can save and download that. But what it means is that in my piece of work, rather than citing the Wikipedia page that took me to this article, I would just cite or refer to this exact article. And then no one can accuse you of having over relied on Wikipedia. You can say, no, actually, I'm using a good quality source from a respectable medical scientific journal. So that's just a little sort of penultimate word about Wikipedia. It is sort of frowned upon to rely on it. And what I would say is there is lots of really, really good content in Wikipedia. Just make sure that whenever you're giving your sources, listing the sources that you've used, never give Wikipedia as the actual source. Always connect through to the sources that the Wikipedia entry authors have drawn from and cite that original research if you think it's of good quality and that you think it's worth using. So that's just Wikipedia. And then finally, then I just want to show you the Queen's Library website just to show you give you an example of what is available from a university library and its resources. So this is the Queen's Library website. And what this gives you is it gives you a search engine here that allows you to search across all the journal content that is available to Queen's University students, but that you have to be a member of Queen's in order to access. So this will give you access to all the premium journals that you as an individual, otherwise you would need to pay for. You can get free access to it. Well, it's not quite free because you have to pay your fees, but it means you don't have to pay up front for the actual articles. So yeah, if you click here where it says article search, this is our search engine for quickly finding full text articles in library journal subscriptions. So you can just quickly type in a search here, and you can search this a bit like Google. So if I put quotation marks around the phrase bowel cancer, I'm telling article search only to look for those words together. Then I can type and, excuse me. Then I can type screening and I can replace the ing with an asterisk to get different word endings. And then if I click search, so article search, this search engine is now looking across all the hundreds, thousands of journals that the university has a subscription to, and it will give me access to those. So I can just look down through this list of results. And if a particular article looks interesting, so here's one about physical activity advice in UK bowel cancer screening, I can click on this check for full text availability link. And this will connect me through to whatever journal website gives university students and researchers access to this content. And this then is where I'm asked to enter my Queen's number. So if you go to Queen's, you'll get a student number and a password that you'll enter here. And this then, all being well, will connect me through, it'll get me through any paywalls. I just might have to click an extra link. It'll get me through any paywalls, any need for me to pay as an individual, and it will give me free access to this journal content. Unless it doesn't, and this will be me ending on a real downer if this article doesn't open up. It did work earlier. Here we go. So that has taken me through the paywall that Oxford Academic, that's basically Oxford University's publishing arm. It gets me through that paywall and it allows me to read this article for free because the university has a subscription to it. So everything now, although this website might look a bit different from what we've looked at earlier, it's the same idea. You can generally read the journal article online if you wish, but then you have the handy PDF download option. And that means then I can keep this article, save it to a memory stick, whatever, and then I can refer back to this as many times as I want in my own piece of work. So yeah, that's just to flag that up. Whenever you do go to a college, a university, or if you did start working for an institution like that or studying at it, their library service or information service should have subscriptions to resources like this, like databases and journals that you'll be able to access for free using the library or information services website. So yeah, that's all I want to say. I hope you find that useful. It is always a bit tricky to sort of do sessions like this that are quite general, but hopefully you've picked up something that you will be able to apply to your own piece of work in terms of searching for high quality information on a healthcare topic from a reliable resource rather than from a source that you just find in Google that might be a bit dodgy or suspect and potentially dangerous. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and then I'll just pass you back to Kieran then to finish up.
Richard, can I ask you a couple of quick questions here, just because there's a lot of information there and I'm glad I have recorded it, but can I ask you a couple of quick questions about that?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you see the way you were showing the students there about how to use PubMed and Cochrane Library and things like that to access articles? And yeah, if I sent you a list of the subjects that the students are doing, that are just, some of them are outside of the medical healthcare field. Okay, would there be any assistance you could give me in terms of getting maybe equivalent search facilities like PubMed and the Cochrane Library for, say, for example, psychology or social sciences or the physical sciences, or, you know, would that be possible? Because you've already shown them the skills of how to use it But I know some of the students are sitting there thinking, what would I do
maybe
in
not
my
relevant
subject?
to them. Yeah.
So would you mind if I did that and see what you could come up with, and then I'll email that out to the students?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say anything that is human health or even animal health, like related, like biological sciences, often PubMed is it's the starting point. If you get into other types of science like physics or chemistry, and then if you did go off into like engineering, there'd be issues there. But yeah, if you send me through
Yes,
some of the topics, I can have a think and I'll feed that back. Yeah, absolutely.
that would be brilliant.
Yeah.
One other thing, can I ask you to go back to what you were doing there? Do you see the way you show the students about Wikipedia, and then you show them the references at the end of it?
Yeah.
The format for for citing references. Now, I know some of the professors like the idea that when the students are doing their written report, if they're going to use a reference, they use a number, and then they number the references at the end.
Yeah.
So we'll probably encourage that, just to use them in numerical order. So instead of using a quotation during the written report, they'll just put number 1, and then they can go to the end for the references. But what I'm asking you is, could you just outline for 1 minute a really sort of standard good practice format for quoting a reference? Do you know what I mean, in terms of name, article, because that would help them to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Just using that example that you did there in Wikipedia.
Yeah. I'm just bringing up something else because there's actually a free Queen's resource. Can I share my screen again?
Please.
If that's okay. Yeah. So again, I will pull together sort of more information on this, but the Student Guidance Centre at Queen's, because this is a big issue for university students, it's how you cite papers. They've produced this tool called Cite to Write. So these are open access videos that take you through different referencing styles. And if you're using a numbered reference style, that's known as Vancouver, and they've done a really good video on that. So I'll share that, and I've got some other resources. But yeah, generally speaking, if I go back to I'm just maybe going to zoom in on this. Yeah, what was the example I was using? Number 48. So yeah, so generally, so Wikipedia is a bit different. Whenever you add a if you're writing a Wikipedia entry and you want to add a citation, Wikipedia has a certain style that guides you through it. But essentially, it is kind of Vancouver style. And I would say, as long as you try to contain the information like this, so list I would say let's say it's a journal article with 6 authors or 10 authors or something like that. Try to at least list maybe the first 2 or 3. So generally the format is you put the author surname first, and then you put their first name, but you just have it as the first initial afterwards. So Ryan E, and then you just list those names in the order that they appear in the sort of the byline of the article. So put those in. Then generally speaking, you put the year or month and year when the article is from. So, August 2017. Then put in the article title, followed up by the source. So that means the journal title, so the actual journal or magazine or whatever it is that's from. And then this information here, it can vary, but usually it's volume and year. So if I just want to show you an article. Let's try this one just. So let's say you have, through your searches, you find this. So let's say you want to cite this particular article here. Just download the PDF of it so that it's open. Yeah, here we go. So it's just a case of trying to glean from this information. So yeah, so it's hard to see, but down here you'll see this is from volume 31 of this journal, and those are the page numbers. So try to record that information, and that's kind of what the Wikipedia author here has tried to do. So 116, that's just the volume number that this particular, the issue of this journal is from that contains this article. And then if you've got the PDF, you'll also have the page numbers so you can cite those. Now, some resources like journal articles, they might only exist online. There might not be a PDF to download, so there might not be any page numbers. So this is all very flexible. If you don't have this information, you can't include it, but where possible, do try to include it. And then as well, there is a DOI, but generally, if you try to include some sort of URL or web page where you've got the article from, sometimes it can be a bit difficult to actually get that in a way that's meaningful. Sometimes they are very long, but if you do just try to get some kind of web address for that, for the article and include that. Often in journal articles, yeah, you'll see here at the top of this here, there's a DOI. That's DOI stands for Digital Online Identifier, and that is sort of like that can be used to substitute for a URL for a particular article or source. So you could just copy that and then paste that in. So yeah, referencing is always a bit messy, but what I say is just always try to be consistent even within your own document as much as possible. So if you've got 10 journal articles that you're citing, just try to be as consistent as possible. Make sure your references to those are as similar to each other as possible. And looking at Wikipedia references like this, it can be a good guide because it is in a numbered style and the format generally of them is quite clear. So just try to replicate that as much as possible. But I will send you through some better resources like this video and some other information that will hopefully clear that up.
Thanks.
Is that okay?
That's brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I know it's getting towards the end of the meeting, so I'll ask the students now if they'd like to put anything in the chat. If there's any questions they'd like to put to you, are you okay with that, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously, if anyone has any questions after this, you can just send them through to me as well.
Yes,
that's fine.
Yes, I'll actually get them to send me any questions, and then I'll forward them to you, Richard.
Yeah, great.
So does anybody want to put anything now, or do you you also have the option of emailing me anything after this, and I will also provide a link for this recorded meeting. So I will stop the recording now in case anybody wants to ask any questions.